Hey there, everybody. This is Forrest with AlphaGrad, and today we are doing tech news today. So we have a few different fun subjects to really bring in our first episode of 2021. That is weird to say. I feel way too old now. Either way, we have a few fun little options that we can really go over. So the first one, we're going to talk about a Slack outage. So if you're not too familiar with what Slack is, it's basically an instant messaging-based solution that a lot of businesses will kind of use, so that way, they can communicate throughout their enterprise. So think of it sort of similar to a Teams-based environment. So it's actually had its first major outage for the year, and we'll go ahead and go into a bit more details about that in just a few. As well, we're going to talk about a data breach. Again, hooray, in the world of cybersecurity. We pretty much are just being slammed right now with a lot of breaches. This one was actually reported by T-Mobile, and it affected customer call logs there. So we'll go into a little bit more detail there. And then an exciting one that is one of the first ones for technology and unions. Google is actually going to be having a lot of their workers create a union and potentially unionize based on both Google and the Google parent company, so contractors are allowed in. And we'll touch base a little bit on that as well. So let's dive right into it. So let's start with the Slack outage there. So again, as we saw, so Slack is having a little bit of issue there. It had a first major outage for the first business day of 2021, really. So today, actually, it was reported at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and finally Slack started to update about the problem at about 10:14. So we finally started to get a little bit of indication from Slack of what was going on. So it really lasted until, I'd say, what was it, about 3 p.m. or so is whenever they had most of their users reporting that it had been resolved. Some integrations are still not working as expected, but they're looking to continuously update that. As you can see, Google and calendar integrations as well as email notifications were not working as expected. So likely going into the next day, we're going to start seeing some indications from Slack. It's going to be interesting to see what exactly happened if they give us a root cause, because a lot of businesses, mine included, that I work for, use Slack for their enterprise solution. So that was definitely an interesting little tidbit to find out that Slack had already had an outage, and it couldn't come at worse time because it's, again, the first business day of 2021. So outside of Slack, another fun one I really want to touch on is the T-Mobile data breach. So what actually happened here is that T-Mobile and one of its vendors had reported a hack here. So we can see that it was reported on December 29th, and it affected about 200,000 customers. Mostly what was leaked here is customer phone numbers and call-related information. So it wasn't so much of trying to get any information such as financials or anything like that from T-Mobile, but the table that was hit and hacked and successfully taken were more or less phone numbers and call logs. Luckily, no financial data or PII, personally identifiable information, or any socials, anything like that were hacked. So it kind of brings back to that point, because this wasn't something that directly happened with T-Mobile. This was something that actually a vendor had an issue that T-Mobile works with. So it was actually their email vendor, and from there, lateral movement was able to be done, and then T-Mobile was hit. So it again brings back to that whole idea with the whole SolarWinds hack that's happening. So, you have a partner or a vendor in your environment, and you really are hoping that they are secure as much as possible, because otherwise you're going to be hit. And we saw this with T-Mobile. Unfortunately, all we can really do is do the best vetting of vendors that we can. There should be a entire risk assessment team that's working with the vendors to make sure that they have everything filled out where you and your company are safe. But, sometimes stuff like this does fall through the cracks. So it's definitely interesting to see that this happened again, especially right after the SolarWinds breach. So outside of that one, it brings us to our last subject here. So the Google workers announcing the plans to unionize. I think this is super exciting. So for those of you that are unsure or don't know, a lot of Google employees have been trying to unionize for a while now. They've actually been terminated in some occurrences because of talks of unionization. So it's definitely awesome to see that they are actually pushing their plans to unionize. Unions in tech really are non-existent. So you really don't have a lot of, I'd say, a support web there to really leverage against your company that you're working with. So, this is a very, very positive and interesting idea, because now, a lot of devs, for instance, they'll be on call, they'll be working 80-hour weeks and only being paid for, a salary rate, even though they should be making basically double of what they are at that point. And it's definitely interesting that we see this from Google first and foremost. It's going to be interesting to see if we see Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, a lot of other big names in tech follow suit on this. But as we had mentioned earlier in the intro, so the Google workers, they have their Alphabet Workers Union, so basically what Google calls their internal teams and everything like that. And they're going to be opened up to Google employees plus the contractors at Google's parent company. So it's really going to be looking for, pay, disciplinary, retaliation, and really, various government contracts that might be seen as unethical in some areas. So it's going to be interesting to see how this union plays out and how many members that it attracts for the Google employees. So right now, you only have 230 Google employees and contractors that have signed on to it. It's going to be interesting to see, because they did have 20,000 workers do a walkout to protest a $90 million exit package after he was accused of sexual harassment. So, again, a C-level kind of getting a severance package, while in the meantime, a lot of individuals actually working in the departments are struggling there. So it's definitely interesting to see, and I'm expecting that it's probably going to grow. It's going to be interesting if Google will take any action against it, or if they're going to have a stance. And again, where else will this go? Will this go to Microsoft? Will this end up being assigned to Facebook employees? Where else might this go? I think no matter what, having a bit of protection, having a web of support is always a good thing, and having it to where it's the first real tech union, I think that's just amazing, and hopefully we'll start to see a lot more throughout the field of tech. So outside of that, those ones are really our three major subjects that we saw just over this last week. It's been a quietish week because, again, it was the holidays. Everyone was on break, so we're hoping that we can start pushing out a bit more. I know that Fozzie here has just launched his new program, which is intended to really help out a lot of individuals and really get them going into the place that they need to be. So it's actually the Zero to Hero IT. I think that's pretty awesome, and kudos to him to really dedicating his time to do that. So without that, I'm going to wrap it here. I really appreciate you all tuning in, and I'll catch you next time on Tech News Today. Take care, guys.